starting. We are live now.
Hi, we're live. I'm almost ready to connect to the internet. And we'll know in just a minute. Is that an S or a 5 towards the end?
S.
Okay.
That's a plus, not a T.
Okay. Hopefully I'll be logged into the Wi-Fi in just a second. I guess I'm live. Is the music still playing over me?
Yeah. We're cutting the music.
Okay. I'm going to look at the camera and say, welcome everyone to the first ever TED Talks with a Z, just to avoid any kind of like, what would you call that? Intellectual property rights. So anyway, hi, I'm Ted Metz. I am running for governor. I am the Libertarian candidate. I am on the ballot. You can go to the Georgia Secretary of State's website, sos.ga.gov, and you can find me listed under a qualified candidate. I've been on the ballot since March the 6th of this year, and I've sort of only been campaigning in the last few weeks, and some of you know the whole story about my travels through the cancer fight. I'm over it now. I'm feeling good. I'm with it, and I am ready to rock and roll on this gubernatorial campaign. Some of the things that people need to know about me is, yes, I have been a libertarian pretty much ever since kindergarten, looking backwards, knowing the definition of what a libertarian actually is. In a nutshell, if you don't like to be told what to do, if you don't like people taking your stuff, and if you like to be left alone, more than likely you're a libertarian, because that's the essence of being a libertarian. You know, leave me alone, don't take my stuff, and don't tell me what to do. So if you're a libertarian and just realizing that now, welcome to the Libertarian Club. We're a big tent, as some of the other parties say, but we actually welcome everyone in. Unless you follow libertarians, we do have a little problem with those who lean libertarian but don't respect private property rights. Now, since this is our kickoff, again, welcome. I'm taking calls at 706-426-1871. Let me tell you about that number. I've had that number for a long time, and the reason I like it is because in 1871, Congress passed a bill known as the Organic Act of 1871, which actually turned America's government, the federal government, from an actual republic into a corporation because they were in debt to the crown. So all of you can look that up. I mean, it's easy to Google the Act of 1871. So anyway, that's my phone number, 706-426-1871. So here we are. I would like to thank my producer, David James, who we're still kind of like making noise in the background, trying to get everything settled in to make sure that we're going to have a good broadcast today. I am on for an hour today. I am pretty much going without a script because I do hope that people will actually ask questions online. So I'm going to Facebook right now to see if anybody's posted anything. This is one thing that we didn't really think through well, is having someone here to actually field questions on the internet. We do have someone manning the phone, so if you want to call in, call in. Area code 706-426-1871. And I'm about to log into my Facebook account. Hopefully it's not going to give me the two-factor authorization screen, so we'll find out because it's a new IP address. So we're going to talk all things libertarian. We're also going to talk about things about what makes me tick and why am I running for governor. I have a lot of people that do know me and know that I have been active in grassroots activism for at least the last 6 years, sort of like pulling in with Ron Paul and his Ron Paul campaign. But let me really go back to the beginning of why I got involved in politics in Georgia to begin with. I do kind of follow the news, which is another story. Remind me to tell you a story about what the news media today means to me. But one day I was listening to the radio and they were saying how Nathan Deal, our senator or congressman from Georgia, was under a huge ethics investigation and about to be kicked out of Congress. And sure enough, he left Washington, he resigned his position, in the House, and within a couple of months, here he is on the ballot for the governor of Georgia. And I thought that was extremely odd, so I really started paying close attention to politics at that time, especially state politics of Georgia. And I'm here to tell you that over the years, I have seen some, which I'll mildly label shenanigans, occur under the Gold Dome and involving, our currently elected officials, many of whom are running for re-election. The amount of collusion, and I'll say it outright, corruption, because that's what it is, of people taking advantage of their positions for personal gain and the gain of their friends and supporters is just astounding, and no one seems to get in trouble for it. Of course, the Georgia legislatures over the years have written themselves exemptions out of what we'd call tort law, just so they don't face any prosecution for anything that they do while the legislature is in session. It's pretty disgusting, and that's one of the things I want to bring out into the light for the public to understand, that the reason our government can get away with so much of what they get away with is basically because they have an exemption from prosecution. Some of that is called qualified immunity, and then of course if the state does it at a state level, it's called sovereign immunity. So a lot of you have heard and seen some of my other video and other media about sovereign immunity and qualified immunity. And essentially, qualified immunity and as well as sovereign immunity is actually a fairly good thing to keep people from filing frivolous lawsuits. But it doesn't mean that it's an excuse or an exemption when an elected official or someone within the state actually does what we'd call an actual tort. David, if you could do that, you're going to have to lower my volume, please. Turn it down, down. Keep going. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so anyway, we just lost audio altogether. There we go. If someone in elected official does, commit a crime, for example, theft of services, like we see mayors once in a while getting in trouble for using the county bulldozer to level and grade their property. They get in a little bit of trouble, but not much. You hear the report, but you never see what the punishment was afterwards. And I'm here to tell you, there's never any punishment. It's just like swept under the rug and forgotten about in a very quick minute. We have so many legislators elected to office who really are taking advantage of the taxpayers in a lot of different ways. The news media doesn't report on it, and nobody is down at the Capitol keeping track of all of this. So one of the things I'd like to call for is people to actually pay attention to what's going on and report it. Make a complaint. Speak up. Get mad about it. Don't reelect these people. A lot of these people who are running again for the 2018 general election really have no business in government other than using it as let's call it public mafia, because that's essentially what it is. When you have a lot of people in office that all sort of get together and pool their resources to gain favorable wealth positions at taxpayer expense, that needs to be punished. It needs to be stopped, and that's one of the reasons. That's not only the only reason I'm running for governor. It's just one of many. The whole criminal justice reform angle on what's going on in Georgia is ridiculous. When I have to say this: the darker your skin gets, the more prone you are to arrest and conviction for the pettiest of petty crimes. While on the other extreme, the higher up you are in the state government as an elected official, the more things are overlooked. It's one of those things. Nobody pays attention to the big boys. Let the big boys play. Let the adults in the room handle it, and nothing ever comes of it. There's another thing called the Judicial Qualifications Review Board or something to that effect. And there are judges who actively pursue less than justice and they make rulings based on policy, not based on law, and there's no way to hold them accountable. Except I do have one friend whose name is Judge Paul Nally. Shout out to Paul Nally. Paul goes deeply into how to use the grand jury to actually make people held accountable. The grand jury in Georgia has a vast amount of power to indict people for wrongdoing, especially any kind of crime that's above a petty misdemeanor. They actually have the power to, cause those people to go to court and be judged by a jury for their wrongdoings. So I'm going to have a lot more information about grand jury access on my website. I'm still looking for the discussion in for this. Let's see here, going share. Let's see. Give me one moment. I'm almost into the event. And here we are. Alright, so anyway, going back to what I was saying about the grand jury access, I have some videos, which I will link soon enough, to take you to an educational video on how the grand jury acts, how it is impaneled, the duties of the jurors, the types of cases that they can see, how the law treats grand juries, both constitutional in Georgia and the federal constitution. So getting to know how a grand jury works and how you go and make your pleading in front of a grand jury, presenting your evidence in hopes of getting a indictment against someone who's done something wrong that otherwise would not be held accountable, is the right course for Georgians to take to hold people accountable that seem to escape justice, while at the same time the people at the lowest end of the economy are constantly being hassled by the police, being arrested, being shot, being killed. And that's what criminal justice reform to me means, is that equal application of the law across the board, doesn't matter your color or your status. So that's something that I want to be keeping first and foremost in front of me as I take over the office of governor. Another reason I want to be the governor of Georgia is to fix all of the things that are wrong with the way our economy works. It's so hard these days to start a business on your own. The thing about being a libertarian is we're all about free markets. We don't have free markets. We have regulated industries. We have regulated markets. We have so many layers of regulation. For a small business to stay in business, they have countless hours of paperwork to fill out, which are just regulatory red tape that really don't do anything to improve the person's business model. It doesn't improve their services. It doesn't improve anything except for allowing someone in the government to have a job and push papers around. There really is no reason for licensing fees and a lot of different categories. When you take a look at the way things are, a person can go through the police academy and become a police officer after a 6-week course. 6 weeks is not a very long time compared to a hairdresser who has to put in 1,400 hours at a minimum to get a hairdresser's license. Does that make any sense? You got a guy out in the street, wearing a badge, carrying a gun, with the authority to basically infringe upon your God-given rights, yet a hairdresser has to put in 10 times more schooling in order to get a license to comb or wash and cut somebody's hair. So things like that really need to be addressed. Like barriers to entry to small business is a very important aspect of actually equalizing the playing field. And as long as we're talking about equalizing the playing field, part of the thing we see with legislation, both on the federal level and on the state level, is oftentimes legislations are passed to grant special privileges to a group of people, essentially giving them like almost a monopoly position for the industry that they're in. If you look at what we've got today, I can't think of an example off the top of my head in Georgia, but Georgia does have things which are regulated industries, like the liquor industry is regulated, communications are regulated, and so many other kinds of industries that require a license, a fee, registration with the state, registration with the county, registration with the city, and taxation and extra reporting for taxes and collecting sales taxes and all this sort of thing. It really gets complicated for a person, especially if they are like a small business mom and pop, and they have so much of their productive time spent on filling out paperwork and so much of their income spent on maintaining licensing and maintaining all the other behind the scenes thing that a person has to do in order to. What are you up to here, David?
I'm giving you the phone, so if somebody calls in, you can answer it.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, so the number again is area code 706-426-1871, and you can tell that I'm pretty much going without a script today, and that's partially because I was expecting more people to call in, and I do understand that having this as the very first with very short notice, I apologize for not giving you more notice, but we really didn't have all the kinks worked out until just a few minutes ago.
Well, we have 2 watchers, and I'm sorry I didn't bring up the mode where it has more interactive. There's a way to do that on Facebook where you can show likes and comments appear on my screen so I could respond to them. But we launched a little unprepared.
Well, I'm glad you're prepared. I don't know why I can't click into this event. View event. This is kind of crazy. I've been trying to log into the event for the last several minutes. All right, so anyway, we're going here without a script today. I'm in a squeaky chair, which is really fun. I love squeaky chairs. Doesn't everyone?
Let me see if I can get on my phone.
It's really odd. I can't seem, since I guess I'm the event creator, then I can't get in to actually view the event. I can't find the discussion. Oh, there we go. I might have found it finally. Okay. Where are we tuning in? Are we not? What are we tuned in on, David? Where are we streaming to?
Should be streaming to your TED Meds.
Oh, the actual page?
Right.
Oh, okay. Let me try that. Are you turning my volume down from over there?
Do you want it down or?
No, I was talking about on the telephone because it just seemed to like creep down all by itself, which was really odd.
No, I had trouble setting up the microphone to begin with because you were sitting about 2 feet farther back from the microphone.
I understand what you're saying, and now I need something to weight this down with.
Oh,
so,
to hold the phone from moving. Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, so anyway, here we are. I'm in the discussion now. Christy McDonald asked, where do you tune in? I'm trying to get on my Facebook page to see if that's where we're actually live streaming. Then maybe things will be a little bit more under control. So here we go onto my page, and okay. Oh, there I am. I'm actually there. There are 2 people watching. I don't see any comments. All right, that's all good. I'm showing plenty of shadow behind me. Hey, I'm in a bright light. All right, so anyway, getting back to my platform planks on why I'm running for governor, we've already discussed, the issue with too many shenanigans going in by too many people who were elected to high office, and that needs to be fixed. Also, what we need to address the criminal justice system. Then we need to pretty much address cleaning up the government overreach. Government has gotten their fingers into so many things they have no constitutional authority to be in. So we can start looking at the various laws and see how they violate both the federal constitution and the state constitution. And then we can start paring it down to increase the number of freedoms that we actually have, increase our level of liberty, and decrease the size of government. Because if you don't have a lot of compliance issues, because the laws are inherently unconstitutional when it comes to their application, then you don't need as many people hired by the government to go around door to door to make sure that there's no freedom there.
And what about the double standard, where they write laws that are for us, but they don't apply to them?
Well, like for example, we'll talk about the hands-free law. I think in some cases people shouldn't be concentrating on sending a text, because that usually takes 100% of your focus off of the task of driving, and a lot of people have died trying to text while they're driving. So it just seemed to be common sense not to drive and text at the same time. Passing a law to do that, to give them one more nose under the tent, one more excuse, one more reason, one more legal fiction to be able to stop us on the side of the road and write us a ticket and collect more revenue from them, I think is kind of ridiculous. It is, like I say, it's not smart to text while you're driving, but to stop you and give you a ticket for holding a phone or holding the phone up to your ear or something like that, I think that's a little bit what I'd call an overreach, and tramples pretty much your Fifth Amendment right as well as your Fourth Amendment right. Your right to privacy. If you're in your own property in your own car, they shouldn't hassle you until you've caused property damage. And most of the traffic laws, if you really read and drill down, nothing can be really enforced if there's no victim. If there's no victim, there's no crime. If you're driving down the road talking on your cell phone and you didn't cause an accident and you didn't cause property damage, they have no reason to stop you.
What about seatbelt laws?
Well, let me finish with the with the hands-free law. The reason I'm saying it's a double standard, and the reason we know it's a double standard, is that cops, officers in their magic blue suits can be riding down the road on their cell phones or their two cell phones with their 2 or 3 computers going, and why are they able to do that? Who's going to give them a ticket? Who says it's all right for them to do something that it's not all right for the citizen to do? That's one of the double standards. The seatbelt law is not the same, in the same vein as causing like a double standard.
Well, child endangerment. If I'm driving around without my seatbelt on my kids, I can get arrested for child endangerment. But school bus driver can have the kids fighting on the bus while they're driving down the road, and there's no child endangerment there.
And there's no seatbelt requirements on buses. I know, it's kind of ridiculous. It's okay to do one thing in one situation and not okay to do the same thing in a different situation. And again, it's kind of like all about revenue. I don't know why they don't have seatbelts on buses, other than Bluebird claims that their cost of production would be outrageous and schools wouldn't be able to afford them. But I don't believe that, because look at Cobb County. Cobb County must have 3,000 buses for their student body, and they're always buying new buses. Why can't they throw seatbelts on there? It just does not make any sense not to have seatbelts on a school bus, for the child safety, and the bus driver's not being arrested for child endangerment. It is kind of silly. So there are a lot of laws that have double standards and unequal application. We could talk all day about how they, everybody. About 1 in 3 people under 30 today have a record for possession of cannabis less than an ounce. It's just a fact. Why? Because it's low-hanging fruit. Why don't the officers go out and stop a capital crime, stop a bank robbery, keep people from committing adultery or some other law that actually is causing harm to other people, especially not consenting adults? But arresting people for a plant is ridiculous. It clogs up the court systems. Well, of course, it's all about revenue, right? We can talk about revenue, and this gets back to criminal justice reform. So many laws are on the book, basically as a means for municipalities, cities, counties, and the state to generate revenue for what they call malum prohibitum laws. That means it's bad because we say it's bad. When you actually go before a jury trial, and if they only taught the basics concepts of law in high school, a lot of these shenanigans would end. Because if there is no victim, there is no crime. The elements of a crime, of course, include a victim, actual damage, either monetary or physical damage, and a wrong intention to do wrong. Mens rea is a legal concept that you don't have a guilty conscience for doing something that you thought was okay. So when they pass a law that prohibits anything because they say they don't want it, like, underage drinking. If underage drinking is bad if it's a 6-year-old, sure. By the time you get 16, you may be responsible enough to actually take a drink. I don't advocate that, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that a lot of the laws that are on the books, such as, the prohibition of cannabis, adultery, the prohibition of I'm going to say it, are you ready? Prostitution, are laws that are, even gambling. They say gambling, it's, just because we say it's wrong, you can't do it, and if you do it and we catch you, we're going to fine you and put you in jail. So those kind of laws just need to be eradicated completely from our lexicon of code, statute, and regulations. If there's no victim and there's no harm and there's no property, there's no damage to property, it should not be a law. You cannot legislate morality. And a lot of these laws that are on the books today, like this, that charge you a fee if you're caught committing something that they say is wrong, is trying to regulate morality. And all of the attempts throughout history, if you actually care about history, every attempt to regulate morality has failed. We'll go back to the 20s and talk about the prohibition of alcohol. With the prohibition of alcohol, you had a small segment of the population that pushed and pushed and pushed and gave enough pressure to the legislators to actually write up a law and actually pass a law to, take completely off the market something that people found to give them happiness, are in pursuit of happiness. If drinking makes you happy, just stay home and do it in the privacy of your home and don't involve anyone else. Don't become an alcoholic, and if you become an alcoholic, please seek treatment. But getting back to the whole prohibition of alcohol thing, the federal government was completely funded by alcohol tax revenue. They outlawed it, and then they had a whole industry that they had created in federal law enforcement for enforcing prohibition. So instead of letting that apparatus go, they changed the boogeyman from alcohol to cannabis. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But getting back to the whole thing of, the government passing a legislation to prohibit something that is enjoyed by a wide number of people is the same thing as mandating hands-free phones. Writing a ticket for having a hands-free phone is the government saying, don't do this because it's not moral, and that's ridiculous. Prohibition didn't work. It was repealed, but because they had a law enforcement agency built up around the whole industry of prohibition, then they went and found another boogeyman. And I'm going to put this in my mouth because I have a salivary deficiency.
Oh, let me get you a bottle of water.
Oh, I have chai tea right here.
So you were saying something about legislators or people in government, they can't be sued or something. There's some law in the books that...
Oh, you want to go back to qualified immunity and sovereign immunity?
Yeah, well, that you were talking about earlier. So it's like more of this...
Yeah, I don't remember...
say, but not as I do.
Well, and there's a lot of that. There is in Georgia Code a section that addresses the conduct of legislators during session. Legislators all of Georgia legislators during legislative session, which is like 40 days from the first of the year to sometimes as late as April, sometimes into June if they have special session, they're exempt from prosecution or even arrest for any crime you can think of. And I've witnessed legislators giving false testimony in committees, giving false testimony from the podium in the chambers. One of the most famous examples of that is one of the legislators who is pushing to restrict undocumented immigrants from getting driver's licenses in Georgia, quoting bogus falsehoods, claiming that, we got to stop this because they can get driver's license. I can't really give you all the details right now, but the long and the short of it is, no one reprimanded him for blatantly lying. You know, I've been to other committee hearings for like transportation projects and such, you know, especially the ones that we don't really need. And the legislator would be in there like lying through his teeth about quoting some made up statistics from some company essentially that had a vested interest in having the project pressed through because they were the contractors that were going to get the contract. So no one holds anyone accountable for truthfulness. So the first thing I'm going to do as governor, I'm going to establish a committee of truth. No, I'm just kidding about that. But, you know, we already have a ministry of truth, and their business is propaganda, and I don't want to engage in propaganda. All right, so far, if you haven't been paying attention here, we have talked about grand jury access. We've talked about sovereign immunity, qualified immunity. We've talked about a little bit about criminal justice reform, and we've also talked a little bit about the nature of the regulations and the statutes which prohibit conduct which they don't like. And again, that legal term is called malum prohibitum. And if you're charged with a malum prohibitum type of a crime, you really need to go to the jury and a jury trial, because a jury trial in Georgia under our Constitution, Section 1, Article 1, Section 1, Clause 11 states that our jurors shall be the judges of the law and of the facts. Now what that means is if the law is ridiculous, if it does not fit neatly within the constraints of the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the supreme law of the land, or of the Georgia Constitution, then that law that person is being tried for can be nullified, and the person can be acquitted of any wrongdoing. And America actually has quite a long history of doing things like that. We're going to look back to the Runaway Slave Act. You know, there were juries impaneled and people charged with basically breaking the law and helping runaway slaves escape to freedom. So these people would be charged, they would be taken in front of the court, and the juries would not convict them because essentially they thought the law was a bad law. It wasn't a constitutional law, therefore they nullified. We've seen several cases here in Georgia lately of juries acquitting people for possession of marijuana, and even more recently we had a win in Dublin, Georgia, for a man who was convicted, or actually who was charged with manufacturing because he was growing his own cannabis plants to treat his severe pain and headaches after basically an accident that left him somewhat crippled. Anyway, the jury found him not guilty on all charges of possession and manufacturing of cannabis because they believed that this gentleman, who is a productive member of society, not in trouble with anything, was legitimately treating his problems with cannabis, and cannabis was effective at a very low cost. So he's not addicted to opioids. He's not on painkills, which eventually lead to long-term liver damage, and long-term use also causes pancreas damage. You know, taking some of the big pharma stuff versus a natural plant that you can grow yourself at home is only not greatly less expensive for you and your budget and essentially taxpayer dollars and insurance premiums. But also cannabis is a much safer long-term treatment modality for chronic pain and some of the conditions that are actually listed on the Georgia Hope Act, Haley's Hope Act. However, Georgia still does not allow importation or in-state grow or cultivation for cannabis medications, and that's something I want to change real quick because, again, it's an issue of freedom. The government does not have the authority to tell people what they can and cannot do if it does not cause harm to anyone else, if it doesn't cause damage to property, if there's no victim, there is no crime. So It looks like I'm going to get a question here. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to suggest that you give the phone number out again. We've only got like 22 minutes left in the show. If anybody wants to call in with a question, or they can put one on the screen here. It seems like we're getting some comments here.
Well, I'm not sure if that's a comment because it's in private messenger. I see that we do have a comment, but there's 3 comments. I haven't checked it. I got distracted. So
what's the difference between? I mean, people like to say you're throwing your vote away if Is it a protest?
Well, let's talk about this. This
What's
is
going
not
on
a
with
protest vote. This is I'm legitimately running as a legitimate candidate. And again, I have been involved in government. I told that story at the very beginning since Nathan Deal was nominated to be the governor of Georgia. It seems that we have organized crime under the Gold Dome, because that's essentially what it is. If you really look at all the things that have gone on under the Gold Dome, it's getting pretty critical. It's fairly serious. And everything in Georgia politics has become so polarized between the extreme left and the extreme right. We got guys, with buses that want to go around collecting people. What does that mean?
8 viewers.
8 viewers. Welcome aboard. And of course, you can go back and watch the archive once this is over with. But next week, I want you to call in on area code 706-426-1871. So I'll repeat that one more time faster. 706-426-1871.
Is that a local call for everybody? Or?
It is. It's a Georgia number, of course. There's no toll. It's toll free.
Even if you're in Savannah or Valdosta,
Well, it's a North Georgia number. How the hell would I know? In the days of cell phones, everybody's on a free plan.
Right.
If you're dialing from a landline, I'm surprised you're even watching Facebook. All right, now you were asking me a question that I was answering about something else here.
I got a question on the screen. 2 or 3 questions.
Well, what is it? How probable would it be for the General Assembly to repeal the state income tax? Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because my platform planks are basically equality, which means justice for all and equal application of the law. Tranquility, which means everybody lives in peaceful coexistence, which is something that's easily done, especially if you get law enforcement away from hassling people over with no victim and no crime sort of situations. And then the last one is prosperity. With prosperity, I haven't really talked about it yet, but industrial hemp really, I think, can be $1 billion boon to Georgia's economy in a very short amount of time, because of the versatility and the number of things that cannabis as well as industrial hemp can do. And we'll talk about that in another event at a later date. Anyway, with the prosperity generated from the income that cannabis can bring to Georgia, we can eventually switch over from a straight income tax. I'm sorry, from an income tax. Yes, from a personal income tax, to essentially just collecting everything we need with a sales tax. We can sales taxes and excise taxes are pretty much constitutional, and they're voluntary. If you see something that you want to buy but you don't want to pay the taxes, find it used and get away from paying the taxes. A lot of people say that having a straight income tax is not equal justice, but the thing is, we have a system. The computers today and internet technology today, it would be so simple to issue a sales tax discount card based on your level within the poverty levels. So you could even be exempted from sales tax altogether if your income falls far below the poverty level. Therefore, we can go to an all sales tax system, and for people with low income and people who are really under the poverty line could be issued a discount card that you swipe just along with any other kind of payment system, and that would deduct money for income taxes off of whatever it is you're purchasing. So we can actually make an income tax a fair system. If we replace income tax with a sales tax across the board for everything, that's kind of the way to do it. And if you want to avoid the taxes, you buy used. It's pretty much that simple.
You can also tourists support the tax system by paying sales tax too, because
Well, and then that's another thing. I mean, there are other things that we can do. We have casino gambling right on the horizon, especially since the chairman of chairman of the Georgia GOP works for a firm that is the largest lobbyist for the casino gambling industry. So casino gambling is right around the corner, and the tax revenue that we can get from casino gambling is huge. And that's another project for you guys to Google at home. It's called the Aerotropolis. The Georgia has a plan to create kind of like a huge tourist industry near and around the airport, which is actually sitting on the Flint River Basin. Yeah, I'm getting calls, but from girlfriends, so I can't really take that right now. So
okay.
If you want to call in at 706-426-1871. So
we had another question here too.
Did I finish the answer on how we can replace income tax with tax revenue generated from other industries that are yet to be built, but on the near horizon?
I think you dove into that pretty well. I think maybe we could spend more time on another time.
All right. What's the next question?
The next question is, why is the media ignoring us, or are they censoring us?
Oh my God! You want to talk about media censorship? I really truly believe that the media is not covering us at all because we don't have the kind of campaign funds to run the TV commercials and stuff. And unfortunately, TV is a business, although it should probably be public utility. Therefore, if it was a public utility, they'd have to go back to the the fairness doctrine, which means that they run ads for one person, they have to run an ad for another person, whether or not that person does any contract for payment for that ad. Anyway, we're not being covered because they're scared of us. They don't want us. They don't want anyone. Okay, look at it. Media controls the narrative. We really do right now live in an extreme period of propagandization. Whether or not you want to believe it, you trust me on this. We're being propagandized like crazy. It's a whole media made up WWE, worldwide wrestling kind of conflict between the extreme left and the extreme right. They are vehemently fomenting anger between Antifa versus the far right. They're calling people Nazis, they're calling people socialists, they're calling people communists. And it's all, the thing is, you don't very often see that in the street, but it's pervasive in media and on social media that we're being pulled apart, left, right. Nobody, especially the media, who is controlling this dialogue to try to take over total domination of every aspect of our lives, from what food you can eat and what vaccines you have to what you have to get to learn in school, to what college you can go to. They're trying to control everything, central planning, but their fingers are in everything. And that is my observation, and through years of research, that it's the same group of people who essentially were behind Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative and John Podesta and all these people. If you look at the ownership of media, they lean highly and far left. The whole thing about Alex Jones getting kicked off of all the social media platforms. The people that own Google, Mark Zuckerberg, all these guys are extreme leftists that want total. They call it socialism, but it's not socialism. It's communism. They want to dictate everything. They want to control pricing on everything. They want to control the flow of information, the flow of the truth. If they can control the flow of truth, then they win. Anyway, to get off topic on that, why do I think the media is not covering me? I really do think that they've gotten their marching orders from someone who's afraid of the libertarian message. It's kind of curious to me that we have a candidate who's deeply in debt and on all the late night talk shows and on the cover of Time magazine. That's not normal for a governor candidate, but she's highly connected to some of the biggest money people on the planet that want to control, the new world order. They want to dominate. Look up the Council of Foreign Relations and look up who else is running for governor that happens to be on the Council of Foreign Relations. It may sound conspiratorial, but the Bilderberg Group are the ones that dictate to the Council of Foreign Relations what their marching orders are and how to carry it out. So it's the Bilderberg Group, CFR, it's not a conspiracy theory. What are you waving at me now for, David?
I'm just giving you a count of this, how many people on the screen. We do have another question here, something about blue laws. When you're done with that question.
Well, I don't see it here, so where is it? So I'll have to click in.
Seth Thomas Benton says, how about blue laws? Alcohol regulates the state. Where is this going on? Regulations for the state seem to be designed to prevent businesses from selling alcohol.
I'm going to address that a little bit. The thing about blue laws and alcohol prohibition, under Georgia law, chartered cities and municipalities have what they call local control. That's how Clarkston, that's how the city of Atlanta was able to reduce possession of marijuana from, a statewide offense if you're busted by the state, but if you're busted by the city, take it down from like thousands of dollars and getting out of jail and paying legal fees and going to court to a $75 ticket. We're still pushing the $75 ticket decrim for possession of marijuana in small quantities all over the state. They're able to do that through what is called local control. I forgot the actual name of the, but anyway, under local control, they can also control alcohol. I remember when Snellville was in such a snit about not allowing Sunday beer sales, Sunday liquor sales. There's some counties in Georgia that still don't allow liquor at all. They only do beer and wine. So what I think about blue laws is what I think about community. If the community has more, if they want to maintain higher control over what can and can't happen in the county, the only way to overturn that is to rile up the people that actually live there to vote it down or put pressure on city council to actually put it to a vote, and then the county residents have to vote on it, and that's pretty much mob rule, but that's the way it works in small counties. This is one of those things that when the government gets control over an industry such as alcohol, they can pretty much call the shots. But on the other hand, if a corporation gets a hold of government and has control over government, like Big Pharma, then they can charge us $1,000 for a pill that sells for 37 cents in a foreign country. So that's one of those things. So is there another question about that? I don't necessarily agree with blue laws, but again, blue laws are one of those things that is a city level issue, and under the legislative structure of Georgia cannot really pass a blanket rule to allow 24-hour beer, wine, liquor sales in all of the counties and all of the municipalities and all of the cities.
Yeah, we have another, I guess, a continuation of that question from Seth Thomas Benton. I'm worried about business thriving and how state regulations might affect that.
Well, I'm gonna actually revert. If you hadn't heard me earlier, I was saying that a lot of the regulations that we have that are sort of restrictive and prohibitive in doing business in Georgia, we need to look at those regulations and such from a constitutional perspective, not a revenue generation perspective. This is the thing, when I first moved to Georgia, I lived pretty close to Gwinnett County, and it was close enough to go and visit quite a bit. And over the years, I actually lived in Gwinnett County when Gwinnett County realized that they had some people in it actually realized that they had the authority to grow a police state within Gwinnett County. I'm not going to mention any names, but one of the guys there recently was made by the feds to sell his $70,000 police cruiser. Anyway, the thing I'm saying about this is I have watched cities and municipalities grow in revenue generation through either taxation or through aggressive law enforcement to grow into these enormous palatial estates like Gwinnett County's Justice Center. It's a multi, probably $1 billion building that is, I don't know, it's like scary thinking that, okay, that's the courthouse and it's the community center and it's all this stuff, and they've spent billions of dollars to build this whole building that probably has $1 million a year budget just for maintenance and such. For what? And how do they maintain that revenue stream? Through aggressive law enforcement for things that have no victim and no property damage. How do you get away from all of that? Again, by a strict interpretation of the constitutional meaning of what is right, what is wrong, what is a law, what is a what is a right versus how you can pass a law to prohibit that right, restrict that right, or infringe upon that right. Okay, you just knocked everything, David. Do you need to readjust or not?
We're fine.
Okay, so does that answer the question? Or was that another question that I missed?
He says thank you for the answer.
Okay, going to take another one. Oh, so anyway, getting back to, making businesses thrive is like, leave us alone. Laissez-faire. Get the boot off our neck. Cut down the regulations, cut down the taxation, cut down the a number of layers. If you have federal law, you have state law, you have a myriad of regulatory bodies such as the EPA, the FDA, all these guys that can come and get in your business to, fine you and regulate you, make you fill out paperwork and all this stuff. There's so many different layers. We just need like one coordinated body that says, okay, you're in business, are you compliant with all this stuff? Do we need to come and check on you? That sort of thing. And otherwise, just leave us alone, because if someone has a problem with the business, their course of action is if there's been property damage or fraud or theft or bodily harm, then they have the right to take them to court. The government doesn't have the right to hassle people to the extent that they currently have. We've just allowed them to do that, and the way to get out of all of that is elect people to government who are willing to go to bat to get that stuff torn down. Because most of these laws, again, are what we call grants of special privilege. And grants of special privileges, they'll pass a law to allow a certain company exclusivity to do a certain function, especially involving taxpayer monies. Like we got one agency, what we'd call a non-governmental organization. It's called a public-private partnership that is in charge of building, building and installing all of the toll road stuff, all of the Peach Pass stuff. All of that revenue first goes to a private company, and then if they have anything left over after they spend all their money on whatever it is they do, then the tax, they goes to the general fund. But the amount of money that actually goes to the general fund is a very small percentage of what the take actually is. Things like that just annoy me. So how do we do that? How do we get away with that? Should we go to private enterprise, or should we say if government is going to implement or institute a function or policy wherein they're paying someone to tax us or to regulate us, it has to be done strictly by a government agency, not by a private company or a public-private partnership. And this also speaks to my attitude about the private prison system and the private probation system. People that, how can you cannot cede, the government cannot cede authority over someone's rights to someone who is not duly elected or appointed or hired and trained by the government for that specific function. So that goes with private prisons, and also goes to the private probation industry. And again, all these industries pay huge campaign contributions to the legislators to maintain this reefer madness prohibition on pot, because it's a low-hanging fruit that they can, generate revenue. I think one of the reasons they passed the hands-free law in Georgia, so now they can bust you and give you a ticket for holding your cell phone in your hand. The thing about that is they're looking for ways to replace their revenue generation streams, because if pot becomes legal, then they lose that easy, low-hanging fruit, profitable way to rape and pillage the citizens over a plant that God made, that is the cure-all to everything that ails mankind, through prosperity and through good health.
And the loss of sales tax revenue because of Amazon.
Well, there's another thing. All right, so anyway, that's my take on that. So I just want to recap here. Were you saying this hour has actually gone by pretty quickly, and I have kind of rambled. I was hoping more people would call in to area code 706-426-1871. Or next week we're going to do this every Thursday. I'm going to kind of wrap up. This will be archived. You can watch it again. Today I've kind of meandered because I really was expecting people to call and ask me questions. Next week, I guess the way we'll structure the show is like the first half hour I will actually present my campaign planks and my solutions to things like, part of the thing about traffic we have in Atlanta is we're still on the red light system, which isn't a step up from, a guy in the middle of the road holding up a stop sign. Those days are long over, and everything we have as far as traffic control can be replaced by a concept known as continuous traffic flow technology, where you never actually have to stop in the way the traffic is routed. It's like once you figure out how to keep people moving in the direction that they want to move, you don't have a need for stoplights. So we can do things like that to improve our transportation infrastructure, and also to lessen the chances of someone getting a ticket for running a red light or a red light cam or a stop sign. It's just that's one of the things that will help increase our freedom of transportation, freedom of travel. So next week, what I'll do for the first half hour, I'll present my solutions to the problems that are presented to us by a government grown outside of its constitutional constraints. I'll give you a homework assignment right now to go and find a constitution and look up the preamble to the Bill of Rights. The U.S. Constitution preamble to the Bill of Rights is the key to the kingdom, because it says that further declaratory and restricted clauses should be added in order to maintain strict control over government. Basically, the line says that the Constitution was written to control government and keep them inside of a box, and this extra section of that known as the Bill of Rights is not all-inclusive, but it is a strict warning to government that mankind existed before government, mankind created government, and mankind is dominant over government, and government should not step outside of the constraints set forth in the Constitution. So that's preamble of the Constitution. So anyway, for next week and the following subsequent shows, what I'll do, I'll present for the first 30 minutes and then take calls for the next 30 minutes. So next week, it'll look like organized and professional. I hope everyone's enjoyed the show. And that's it for me today. Thanks for tuning in. And hopefully we're out. So now I'll go pick my nose.
Trying to get it.